Henry and Mudge, Under the Yellow Moon by Cynthia, Rylant, illustrated by Susie Stevenson. Ooh, exciting. How's the illustrator showing us the seasons? What seasons? Ooh, and we have a table of contents. Together in the Fall, Under the Yellow Moon, and Thanksgiving Guest. Together in the Fall. In the fall, Henry and his big dog Mudge took long walks in the woods. Henry loved looking at the tops of the trees. He liked the leaves, orange, yellow, brown, and red. That tells me, the illustrator is telling me that it is autumn or fall. Mudge loved sniffing at the ground, and he likes the leaves too. He always ate a few. In the fall, Henry liked counting the birds flying south. They fly south in the winter. Mudge liked watching for busy chipmunks. Since one was a boy and the other was a dog, they never did things just the same way. That's how it makes it interesting. Henry picked apples and Mudge licked apples. Henry put on a coat and Mudge grew one. And when the fall wind blew, Henry's ears turned red and Mudge's ears turned inside out. But one thing about them was the same. In the fall, Henry and Mudge liked being together most of all. Chapter 2, Under the Yellow Moon. Henry loved Halloween. He loved to make jack-o'-lanterns. He loved to make paper bats. Remember, you can always pause and read this on your own if you want. And most of all, he loved to dress up. But there's one thing about Halloween Henry did not like, ghost stories. And Henry's mother loved to tell ghost stories. You can see his face. Every Halloween, she put on her witch's hat, lit candles, and told ghost stories. She thought Henry liked them because he told her he liked them, but really he hated them. They scared him, and he was afraid to tell her that. Oh, have you ever been afraid to tell somebody the truth? But this year, Henry had Mudge. Mudge would be with him. Henry would not be afraid of ghost stories. So Halloween night, Henry's mother put on her hat and lit her candles. She invited Henry and Mudge and some of Henry's friends to listen to ghost stories. It was dark outside. A big yellow moon was in the sky. It was dark inside except for the candles and one jack-o'-lantern. Henry got close to Mudge on the floor and Henry's mother began. First, she told a story about a man who lost his head. Henry shook. His friend shook. Then she told a story about a cat in a graveyard and the candles made shapes on the walls and Henry shook harder. Then Henry's mother began telling a story about a pair of shoes that went looking for someone's feet. The shoes, she said, came out only at night, and they walked up and down the streets looking. You could hear them, she said softly. They went click, 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 click. Henry's mother tapped her own shoes on the floor. Click, 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 she whispered. But when she stopped tapping, Henry still heard something in the room under the yellow moon. Henry held his breath. Something went click, 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 but faster. Henry's whole body shook, and it was like someone walking faster and faster. Click, 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 click. What was it? Henry's mother bent down. Mudge, she said. Henry knew his mother was scared too if she needed Mudge. Mudge, she said again. The clicking got louder. The shoes are coming, thought Henry. He put his head on Mudge's neck. Now the clicking was louder than ever. Mudge, Henry's mother said, stop chattering. Chattering? Henry put his ear near Mudge's mouth, and Mudge's teeth went click, 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 click. It wasn't a pair of shoes. It was Mudge. And he was more scared of the yellow moon in the dark room and the witch's stories than anybody else. Poor Mudge, Henry thought. And Henry stopped shaking and put his arms around Mudge's big head and held Mudge tight. Have you ever told ghost stories? Then they listened to the next story about a chair that rocked all by itself. Mudge clicked all the way to the end. All right, last chapter, Thanksgiving Guest. In November, Henry's Aunt Sally always came. She came 1 week before Thanksgiving. I like her hat. Remember, you can pause at any time. She left 1 week after Thanksgiving. That is why Henry did not like Thanksgiving, because he did not like Aunt Sally. She talks too much, Henry thought. She eats too much, Henry thought. She hogs the TV, Henry thought, and Henry wished Aunt Sally would stay home. Aunt Sally had not yet seen Henry's dog, Mudge. I bet she hates dogs, Henry thought. Oh, how he wished Aunt Sally would stay home, but she didn't. She came 1 week before Thanksgiving, right on time. Aunt Sally came into Henry's house. Come turkey and truffles. She was talking and talking and talking. She went right into the kitchen with Henry's father. Henry knew what Aunt Sally would be doing in the kitchen. Henry went to the backyard to find Mudge, and at last Henry thought that Aunt Sally must be finished talking and eating, so he went back inside with Mudge. They walked into the kitchen. Aunt Sally was still eating. Good grief, she yelled, and Henry and Mudge stepped back. I knew she hated dogs, Henry thought, and Aunt Sally looked at Mudge. Good grief, she said again. But then she took a cracker off her plate. She threw it to Mudge. Snap went Mudge's mouth, and the cracker was gone. Henry looked at Mudge. Henry looked at Aunt Sally. Great dog, Aunt Sally said, and she put a cracker in her own mouth. Want one? She asked Henry. Sure, said Henry. He sat down with Aunt Sally. She still ate too much, and she still talked too much, but all of her talk this time was about Mudge, and that was different. Aunt Sally talked about Mudge's sweet eyes. She talked about Mudge's strong chest. She talked about Mudge's soft fur. She talked about Mudge's good manners. And she fed Mudge lots of crackers. This year, Henry knew he was going to like Thanksgiving. This year, Henry knew he really had something to be thankful for.